Welcome to Selling in the Motor Trade, in association with Automotive Management and SMT. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips, and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. And firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in. Hi, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about the first review in a sales process. And this really comes on the back of another episode that we've done, getting people to do what they should do, okay? But this is specifically for the sales managers. So I urge you first to go and have a look at that other episode. We talk about Skippy's 6 steps to get people to do what they should do. That's important. But this is a follow-up from that, really. Because you know what? There's 3 times throughout a traditional sales process that you can touch base with your salesperson. It's logical, and you can just make sure they're on the right track. Actually, there's 3 times you can load the salesperson's lips with some ideas they should talk about. There's 3 times you can actually inspect what you expect. Now, this list is not inclusive or exclusive. Now, what I mean by that is these 6 steps, you wouldn't do them with every single salesperson every single time. You might bore them senseless. Also, you might add more things in these 6 steps for that brand new salesperson. The experienced guy, you might only ask 1 or 2, otherwise you're going to really patronize them, okay? But this is where in a traditional process, your salesperson has done the meet and greet, they've qualified the customer, they may have looked at the customer's trade-in or their part exchange as a qualifying tool. They're coming in and touching base with the sales manager, sales controller, or business manager. So on that strategy session, the first thing I really like to do is ask your salesperson to tell you a couple of interesting things about their customer. What I'm really looking for there is, has my salesperson qualified the customer as well as the deal? So many times our salespeople at that stage, they've just done deal qualification. So when I say, hey, come on, tell me a couple of interesting things about your customer, or hey, what's your customer do for a living? Too often I hear salespeople say, I've not got to that stage yet. What I'm looking for is, tell me a couple of interesting things. Wow, boss, they've got 2 kids and they're going to Disneyland Paris on the next summer holidays. That's great. That's customer qualification. But if they say, well, they've had their car for 2 years and actually they want to keep their payments under the $400 a month, I say, well, listen, that's great, but that's probably deal qualification. Also, if you see there's a child seat in the back of the car, make sure you say to your salesperson, is it a boy or girl? What age? To make sure they've qualified the customer, not just the deal. So that's the first bit. Hey, go on, tell me a couple of interesting things about your customer. Number 1. Number 2, I like to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Salesperson, okay, what was it about that RAV4 that put on your customer's shopping list? What was it specifically about that Q5 that influenced their inquiry? What was it specifically about that car that put it on their shopping list? Now, if you've been on SMCotraining's training courses, our Road to a Sale, our masterclass, you know we talk about this thing called gap selling. Finding out the gap from the customer's current situation, and then we can fill that because their desired situations where they'd want to be. And we do that by asking people, hey, listen, what was about that car that put it on their shopping list? That finds out the 2 or 3 key buying decisions as to why someone wants to buy that new car. We talk about the mobile phone world. There's thousands of different functions on a mobile phone. But the reason why someone chooses an iPhone or the Samsung phone or something else, it's not hundreds of different things. When you dig into it, it's only 2 or 3 different things. 2 or 3 hot buttons, 2 or 3 things that really turns the customer on about that phone, and 2 or 3 things that turns the customer on about your car. So we would like our salespeople to say, hey, what was about that car that put on your shopping list? So again, we're going to ask your salesperson the same way. Oh, something I learned very early on in my career. Always ask your salesperson exactly the same way you'd want your salesperson to ask the customer. I'll give you a classic example. On our sales training, we would not want our salespeople to say to a customer, when are you looking to buy? Because we know that customers say, well, it's early days, just started looking, and your salesperson's head starts dropping. They don't ask a closing question. It puts too much pressure on the customer to start with. Now, we ask it in a different way. We'd want to turn around and say, hey, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, how do you normally change your car? Do you keep it for a certain amount of miles or a certain amount of time? Well, it's mileage really. Or how many miles do you keep the car to? Normally about 60,000 miles. We have a look at their car. It's got 59,000 miles on it. We don't need to ask that question. How do you normally change your car? Mileage or time. Now, I stole that technique from a man called Nick Sewell. Okay, I love that one because you get to when they're looking to buy without directly asking it. If it's time, how long do you normally keep it for? About 3 years. We have a look at their car. They've had it for 3 years. Guess what? They're there to buy. But so often we train that. But in car dealerships, our salesperson goes into the manager, and the first thing a manager says, and I said it as well, is, when are they looking to buy? When are they looking to buy? Okay. Now, the manager's not a bad person. We're asking that question simply because we're trying to work out, is it a deal for this month or not? Okay. But we'd want our salesperson to ask it in a different way. And that's where shopping list comes in. We want to ask your salesperson the same way we'd like them to ask the customer. Okay. Now, in the real world, if you really get hung up on the word shopping list, on our sales fitness program, we give lots of different ways to get the same result, but not that word for word. Okay, so that's number 2. Hey, what was about that car put on their shopping list? You're looking for the hot buttons that turns the customer on about that car. Now, the third thing that you'd like to say to your salesperson is, what type of customer are you dealing with? Is it a lion, a puppy dog, a snake, or a mouse? Now, if you've been through SmCotraining, you know we call the customers the lions, the puppy dogs, the mouse, or the snake. If you've been through other training, you might know them as the reds, the yellows, the greens, or the blue. If you've done any Myers-Briggs training or discus, you know it will be the drivers, the expressives, the amiables, and the analyticals. So you might say to your salesperson, so what type of customer are you dealing with? What are they, a lion, a puppy dog, snake, or a mouse? Too often you'll ask that question, your salesperson will say, oh, I don't know. Well, start thinking about that when you're doing your presentation and demonstration, because that's going to affect what type of closing question you might ask. Okay, so you might throw that one in. The next one you might throw in is this acronym called SPACER. Part of qualification, we know that people are interested in the safety of the car, the performance of the car, the aesthetics of the car, the comfort, the economy, or the reliability. And I like to say to your salesperson, come on, with SPACER, what type of customer are they? What is their buying emotion? We've got their personality type with lions, puppy dog, snakes, and mouse. But now what's their buying emotion? Is it safety, performance, or practicality? The aesthetics of the car, the comfort, the economy, or the reliability? I like to ask that just to make sure when your salesperson does their presentation and their demonstration, or they go out and do their See It Now video, okay, and they're preparing that, or they actually do their Zoom live call, and I know we're doing lots more of that now, okay, they can actually tailor the presentation to the customer that's there. Too often I hear the salesperson has just had a new baby, all excited about the safety stuff on it, harping on to Mr. Boy Racer about the ISOFIX child seats, or vice versa. Make sure you get the right feature for the right customer. So as a manager on this first review, ask your salesperson, hey, what floats their boat with SPACER? Okay. Some manufacturers out there train precise. I think precise is, are they interested in the performance of the car, reliability, the image of the car, the comfort, I can't spell precise. You got the idea, okay? We tend to talk about spacer at SMCotraining there. That's the next bit you might want to throw in. Now, remember, this list is not inclusive or exclusive, okay? You might ask more or less. Next one I like to do is we talk about urgency. Part of the 4 fundamentals is urgency. It's the last of the 4 fundamentals, okay? But what we need to do is with urgency, we're going to ask the salesperson exactly the same way that we'd want a salesperson to ask the customer. That reminds me of a funny story. A man called John Dorbar was a client of ours. I was working with him in a Mazda dealership. Now, John had a young salesperson, just started in the trade. I can't remember his name, but a really nice guy. And he had a hard work customer. A customer wanted an unrealistic price on either the monthly payment or price for their car, something like that. The salesperson came into John, and John said, you know what, tell your customer he's on drugs if he wants to get to that deal. Yeah, you guessed it. Unfortunately, that salesperson must have gone and said it word for word, because about 2 minutes later, the salesperson's at John's door with the customer right beside him saying, I want to speak to the manager. Okay, who is this? Okay, that's the worst case I heard, but be careful. We do say things like when you're looking to buy, and customers put it out exactly the same way, okay? Are they looking to buy and are we dealing today? Just be careful on speaking to your salesperson the same way you'd want them to speak to your customer. That's important with urgency. We know we need to create urgency within the deal, but urgency has to be subtle, believable, and often early on the process. And there's 4 things we might be able to create urgency on their trade-in. If you're in Australia or Ireland, we tend to call them trade-ins or part exchanges. Here's the 4 things. First one is service. We'd like to say to a customer, do you mind if I check the service history? Okay. And the next service is the 50,000 kilometer service. Is that the big service on these? Or is that the major service? Because that creates a bit of urgency. Okay. So when your salesperson comes in, you might want to turn around and say to them, oh, you got the appraisal here. The next service is the 50,000 mile service. Is that the big service? Is that the major service? Now, when you start asking that, trust me, your salesperson will say, oh, I don't know, boss. No. Ask the customer, because it's put a bit of urgency into the customer's mind. What we want our salespeople to do is say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, your next service is the 50,000 mile service. Is that the big service? I'm not sure. Don't you worry about that. You prefer us to worry about that than you, wouldn't you? Or is that fully paid for? Sorry? Lots of our customers have the services fully paid for. Did you take advantage of a service plan when you bought the vehicle? So it might be a hook for a service plan if you're selling that, but also urgency. Next one on urgency, we'd want our salespeople to say to the customer, or Mr. or Mrs. Customer, when is the MOT due? Or when is the road certificate due? Or in Ireland, when's the NCT test due? Okay. Now, again, with that, when the customer say, in 2 months' time, in 6 weeks' time, we'd want our salespeople to say, great, okay, is there anything you don't think will pass on that next MOT test? Now, outwardly, every customer says, no, it's fine, it'll sail through. But in their mind, they're sitting there thinking, uh-oh, what about those tires? What about that chip in that windscreen? I'm not sure about that one there. What about the advisories? Okay. Now, with that one, as a manager, I want you to turn around and say to your salesperson, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Salesperson, okay, or Jack or Jane, is there anything you don't think will pass on the next NCT test? When you start asking that, be prepared for your salesperson to say, well, how would I know? Then you can explain, no. Go and have a look at Skippy's 4 fundamentals as to why anyone buys anything first. There's another plug, but actually that might create some natural urgency. Oh, quick one on this. We do teach your sales guys, and they stop asking that quickly because they never think it's worked. If you say to someone, is there anything you don't think will pass on that next NCT test? The response you'll always get is, no, it's grand, it'll sail through. So salespeople stop asking that because they don't think it's worked. It has It's just worked in the customer's mind. That's where they're thinking, uh-oh, what about this? And the last one for urgency might be the tax. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, can you do me a favor? Can you just read through when the tax is due? If you're in Ireland, you read it on the windscreen. In the UK, we haven't had tax discs for many years now. In Australia, the registration, you'll be able to do that, okay? Now, we do that because when that tax is due, that's a great catalyst for change. If you're listening to this in the UK, have you been in the trade long enough to remember when tax discs were around? How many people come in and they had a week or two left of tax on it? Wasn't it a catalyst for change? In fact, in the UK, the DVLA sends through the tax reminder 4 to 6 weeks before it's due. Actually, that's when people start looking. I think it's a huge catalyst for change. So those 4 things for urgency, you might talk to your customer. No, you won't. You'll talk to your salesperson about. Hey, service, their next service, is that the big service? Is it fully paid for? That MOT, is there anything you don't think will pass on that next MOT? Hey, with the tax there, okay, talk about the tax. And the last one is tires. Now, through our urgency training, I love tires at the moment. Tires are such an easy way to create some natural urgency with the customer. Now, a tire has got 8 millimeters on it when it's brand new. The legal limit in most countries we sell, I'm thinking all of them there. Canada, I'm not sure on this one, but it's 1.6 millimeters. Guys from Canada, listen, let me know if it's not, but I'm pretty sure that's 1.6 millimeters everywhere else there. So if the tire has got 2 millimeters on it, we don't want your salesperson to go out with the calibrated fingertips. Okay, go out with a tire gauge with the customer's car. They might create some urgency by saying, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, what sort of mileage a week are you doing? Oh, really, that many? Just let you know that your front 2 tires, you want all the way down, that you've only got 0.4 of a millimeter until they're illegal. Now, to put that in context, that's equivalent to the bumps on a credit card. The only reason I tell you that is in the UK, the government's changed the maximum fine to £2,500 per tire and 3 points in your license. I just say that because I'd hate to think you leave here, you get pulled up by the police, you think, hold on, I was in a dealership last week and Simon never told me that. Oh, if we can't agree a deal, I will be phoning the police and I'll just be waiting for you out there. Yeah, clearly don't do the last bit. That's a joke, okay? But they're the 4 things for urgency that I would ask my salesperson. With the tires, turn around and say to your salesperson, they've got 2 millimeters on it. You know that's only 0.4 of a millimeter until it's illegal. If it's got 3 millimeters on it, you know it's only 1.4 millimeters until it's illegal, and that's the thickness of a credit card. Do they know that the maximum fine in the UK is 3 penalty points per tire and £2,500 per tire? In Ireland, it's 5 penalty points as a maximum fine per tire and €180 fine and 5 points maximum. But check in your country what it is and don't use it as a threat. Now, the next thing we're going to do is make sure your salesperson has sown the seeds or put the hooks in for some of the bolt-on sales, some extra products that you're selling. Now, please be wary of what country you're in. We train in lots of different countries. So in your country, you might not be able to do all of this. Please check the legislation. For example, in the UK, you've got the Financial Conduct Authority, and some of the things you'll have to change the way you do it. But we might turn around and say to your salesperson, hey, where is their paint and fabric protection certificate? Okay, do they still have their paint and fabric protection certificate? Oh, I've not got to that stage, boss. Well, no, ask your customer, because that is a hook or sowing a seed for your paint and fabric protection later on. We'd want our salesperson to ask that question when we're looking at their car. And when the customer says, I haven't got it, that's a shame. The boss normally pays a touch extra when we've got that paint and fabric protection certificate, just because he knows any scuffs and marks in the upholstery tend to come straight back out. But listen, do me a favor, just check your paperwork, because you know what? Every manufacturer in Europe recommends some sort of paint and fabric protection certificate. Next one, you might turn around and say, hey, listen, what level of asset protection do they have? If you're selling a gap insurance, okay? A customer might say, sorry, listen, that's something most of our customers have. They protect the whole value of the car. Do you not have anything like that? Okay. Now, again, check your legislation on how you sow the seeds on gap. You might not be able to do that at all at that stage within your business. Okay. But if you can, okay, in the countries that you can do, sow the seed. Let's assume everyone's got some sort of asset protection. Okay. Because if they assume everyone's got it, when you present it later on, they might think, well, why did I not have that in the past? So listen, what level of asset protection applies? They've all got it. That's something most of our customers have, because everyone knows that insurance companies love taking the money, but they don't like paying it back out. Okay. So you don't have anything. They'll pay you right back up to what paid for the car when you bought it. It's just a seed. Now, by the way, you're not replacing the full presentation on it. It's just a hook early on. Next one in, you might see a scuff or scrape on the alloy wheel or a scratch or a dent. Now, if you're selling any sort of smart insurance, you might want your salesperson to say, or see the scrape down the side, or that alloy wheel there where you've used it as a parking sensor, Mr. Customer. Do you want me to value the car as it is, or you claim on your motor vehicle insurance for that? Oh, no, as it is. Don't blame you. By the time you take into account your excess and what it does to your no claims bonus, it's never worth doing for something like that. What happened? That McDonald's car park. All right. Or listen, do you have any smart cover? What's that? That's something a lot of our customers have now. Effectively, they have a pot of 3,000 euros and spend over the next 3 years maintaining the showroom condition of your car. So you don't have anything like that? Okay, it might be something to consider next time. And the last thing is we might want to sow the seeds on the finance, okay? And we're going to go down the assumptive route. We might ask our customer, hey, listen, what's your guaranteed minimum future value? If they're on some sort of PCP, a personal contract purchase, okay? You might turn around and say, hey, listen, when's your next payment due? I wouldn't want our salesperson to say, how are you funding the new car? Because we know they always say cash, because customers still think they're going to get a better deal. So there are 4 things that when the salesperson comes and touches base with you on that first review, I'd turn around and say, hey, listen, do they still have their paint and fabric protection certificate? Don't know. What level of asset protection have they got? That scrape on the side, am I valuing it as it is, or will they claim on their motor vehicle insurance? Didn't get there, boss. Or do they have any smart cover where they got that pot of £3,000 they spend over the next 3 years maintaining the showroom condition of your car? How many payments do they have left on it? Okay. When's their next payment due? Hey, what's their guaranteed minimum future value? To make sure they've sown the seeds on the products that you want them to do. Now, the last thing you're going to say to your salesperson is, hey, what car are you going to take them for a drive in? Or what car are you going to arrange a demonstration drive in for them if you have to do unaccompanied demonstration drives? But right then, too many times I hear salespeople say, oh, they don't want to drive the car. They just want to look at the numbers first. Okay. Hey, we want them to drive in the car to raise the desire where possible first. That's your cue, Mr. or Mrs. Sales Manager, to go out and say, hi, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, just want to introduce myself. I'm Simon. I'm going to do a bit of homework on your car, just get the best price for it. Hey, but listen, while I'm doing that, I'll get John to take you for a drive in that new Q5. You're going to be really impressed with the power of that compared to your old model Q5. I'll see you when I come back. Guys, when I do that, I promise you, hardly any time do the customer say, no, I don't want to drive it. Okay, just insist. And also I like to do that, so when you come in second phase at the end, you've already been introduced. You're not just the bad person coming out. So guys, that about does it for this episode. There's some ideas for you on that first review, just to make sure you've inspected what you've expected. And next time, let's talk about that second review when they come back from that demonstration drive. That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn.